Let's read the story Birth, written by A.J. Cronin. Let me tell you that the author is no mean personality. He served as a surgeon during the World War First, but later on he devoted himself entirely to writing. And he, of course, is known to write about his experience, and even the story Birth shares one of his experiences that he had gained during his practice as a medical practitioner. So this is about the author, and therefore the facts that we'll get will not be fictitious but true. When we come to the story Birth, we'll have to know about the context in which it is written. This is an excerpt from A.J. Cronin's novel The Citadel. Dr. Manson, the principal character, had just begun his medical practice as an assistant to Dr. Edward Page in the small mining town of Blanley. And as the story starts, we just get to know that he is returning home from a disappointing evening with Christine, the girl he loves. He is met by Joe Morgan. So we get to know at the beginning only that Dr. Andrew Manson returns home. He is like any other person. His life is actually caught between his personal life and that of professional one. But then as a doctor, he gives importance to his professional life too. So even at night when he returns home, he finds a patient, or rather a patient's attendant, waiting for him, and he readily consents to go with him. So this is the context in which we'll have to really read this story. It's midnight, it's not, the daytime, but he has returned home and he finds Joe Morgan waiting for him. And the case actually that comes before him is a critical one, and he's new to the profession. These are again two things that we'll have to keep in mind. But then he really puts himself heart and soul into it and deals with the case. Let me share the story. Dr. Andrew has just come home when he finds Joe Morgan waiting for him. And Joe Morgan actually wants him to accompany him to his house for his wife's delivery. Though he was feeling dull and restless, he accompanies Joe to his house. There he finds Mrs. Morgan's mother and an elderly midwife waiting beside the patient. After noting the progress, he just settled down by the kitchen fire, deciding to wait till everything was over. Joe Morgan stays out, but Mrs. Morgan's mother is there to keep her eyes focused on him. She fears that he might leave, but then he promises that he would be there with them. And he is informed that Mrs. Morgan was expecting the child after a very long time, and therefore she wishes that if the chloroform harms the baby, it should not be given to her. Then comes the moment when the child is born. It is after a frantic struggle that the child is born, and the child is born lifeless. He quickly gives the child to the nurse and attends to the mother, because she is again in a critical case, a critical condition. He gives her an injection, and when he finds that her condition is stable, he turns to the child. The midwife, who feared that the child was born lifeless, had just kept the child beneath the bed. He asked her to hand him over the child. The moment he looks at the child's condition, he finds that he is somewhat under the case which is called asphyxia pallida, wherein there is lack of oxygen that leads to such a condition. He had learned this during his internship, and he quickly resorts to the treatment. He asked them to give 2 basins of hot water and cold water, and he kept plunging the child alternatively in the hot and cold water. The midwife reminded him gently that the child is stillborn, but Andrew was not the one to give up. He kept juggling the child first in hot water, then in cold water, but when it did not work, he finally rubbed the chest of the child, and then there was a kind of a gasping, and he felt that the child is alive. And Andrew, the moment he finds the heartbeats of the child, there's an iridescent bubble, and he is overjoyed. He feels that now the child will live. After reviving the child, he just hands over the child to the nurse. It was almost daytime. It was dawn rather, and he could find the miners leaving for work. And the moment he finds that everything is fine, the mother and the child, he comes down and congratulates Joe Morgan. There was a feeling of pride, a sort of real achievement that he has done something real at last. So in a way, Dr. Andrew Manson gives birth not only to a baby but also to his own profession, because had he not actually struggled to keep the child alive, his reputation in that community would have been tarnished. Besides, it was a good job well done. So though Andrew Manson was a new doctor, he seems to be dedicated, hardworking, and perceptive. He fights with everything in him to save mother and child. He goes beyond the medical theoretical things, and it was his practical knowledge that helped him. So he rises in stature in his own eyes and in the eyes of the local people. So birth is a beautiful story, a story that establishes the nobility of the medical profession. It establishes the fact that there is a lot of difference between theory and practice, and that the internship and the time spent does not go waste.